Hello, Looney listeners. You are listening to Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast, and this is a big episode. Everything's new. We've got guests galore. It's a huge party, and it's also the end of quite a seminal run for Moon Knight. I'm your host, Ray, one of the High Priests, and I'm joined by a fair few people here. I'll just quickly run through them. First of all is Connor. Connor, how are you?
I am doing fucking fantastic. It's a great morning.
Fantastic, Connor. I was about to ask as well, usually in our openings, we always say, get your Khonshu on. Had you ever known what that actually meant? Do you know what it is to get your Khonshu on?
Did I come up with that?
I have no idea.
Possibly. No, I cannot reasonably think of one thing it could mean.
Okay, so it'll just have to go into the ether, I guess, and it'll never be discovered. Because, I'm sorry?
No, I'm blanking. No.
Do you blanking? Because as you probably heard, Loonies, we have a new format. We have new music. We've got a new logo. It's all happening. We've got our other High Priest here, Rebecca. Rebecca, welcome back.
Hello.
Hello,
it's good
Rebecca.
To be back.
Yeah, and I must say, I really do dig your knee-high socks and your
Thank you.
And your gun that you use on supervillains. It's really good.
Wow, Brits and guns. What can I say?
Oh, good.
But it is quite so weird. It's the only time I'll be holding a gun, but that's cool in and of itself. And my school uniform was purple, so I'm well into the purple skirts.
Fantastic. And Loonies, if you have absolutely no idea, but you should have, what Rebecca's talking to, we'll get to that later. And so the High Priests are all here. We also have one of our favourite Loonies. He's been here. We picked him from the Daily Bugle. He's got his ear to the ground. He is our man on the streets. Tommy, welcome back.
Hey, thank you. Very happy to be here and very excited.
Excellent. Yeah, this is a big one, I must say. It's really good. And of course, we are all here looking at Moon Knight 200 and having a good old chat with none other than Max Bemis. A huge welcome to you, Max. Welcome on the show.
Thank you. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello again. Here I am.
I'm so glad Connor got that first swear word out of the way, so it's kind of free reign now. It's really good.
Oh, yeah, fuck.
So much for my son coming on the
show. We'll shield him from that.
Yeah, right.
So as mentioned, we have there was a bit of a soft launch last episode. We've got a new look to the show. We've got new music, fantastically supplied by Delita. And the lead singer, guitarist Noel Tate, he wanted me to actually just say hello to you.
Buddy of mine.
Yeah.
One of my first tours ever.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be great, because he asked me, told me to give you a hello. And their music is awesome as well. They've supplied the new theme to our show, as well as the music in between, everything in between. And also our new logo as well. A big shout out to Randolph Benoit. And his brother Ben, who actually put us onto it, he is a graphic designer, and he was so generous to refine, I guess, the shonky design that I had for the logo. So thank you so much, Randolph. Again, this is just testament to the awesome community, Loonies, and the show. Everyone's just kind of sharing stuff and pitching in. It's really great. So, we're here. And look, Connor, I'll throw it to you to, I guess, let the Loonies and Max as well know what we're doing tonight.
Right. Well, I mean, episode 68 doesn't actually represent anything in terms of a milestone. But Moon Knight, issue 200, dropped this Wednesday. So we have the incredible Max Bemis with us to
thank you.
Basically run through the issue with us. We'll have a bare bones narration. We'll talk a bit about the issue, and then we'll have a retrospective look at Max's entire run on Moon Knight, the whole 12 issues question mark?
I think it's 12.
Yeah, 12.
All right.
Yeah.
And we got some great questions, just plenty of chat about it, talking with the wonderful Max Bemis. So hell yeah. If there's any time to get your Khonshu on, it's now. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, Max, that is absolutely an honor to have you. And and this show is kind of like, I guess, it is a milestone in the sense as the 200. It's a celebration, a retrospective. Having a look back at your run on Moon Knight, but of course, looking ahead at what you're doing.
Sure. Yeah.
So, Rebecca, can I ask you to kick off? Let's kind of keep this loose, and whatever happens. We'll ask Max.
Yeah. I'm not going to go straight from your list.
Yeah, no, of course, no, of course.
Cool. Because I spent a very pleasant afternoon yesterday rereading some comics, which are very good. First of all, let's get it out of the way. I'm like the biggest pusher of Fool Killer on the planet.
Oh, that's so
I love it
awesome.
so much. Like I don't even know why I love it so much, but I love it. And when they announced that you were going on to Moon Knight, and Ray and Connor were like, "Do we know like much about his writing?" And I'm like, "Oh my god, he wrote Fool Killer."
Thank you.
I know it's probably one of those little weird. Yeah, I mean, it was like I decided to try all of the little Deadpool ones that came out of it, and that was the only one I stuck with. And then of course I realized you'd run Worst X-Man ever, which is also lovely and charming. And I need to thank you on behalf of all the Bucky fans in my life for writing the Who Didn't Want Bucky Back, Bucky Ross.
Thank you.
Thank you. It certainly sold a few issues. I think just that line, but it's also quite something to. If people haven't read it, you should go read it. That both of them actually, they're both really good little mini runs. So which means you get a complete story. And Worst X-Man Ever actually you got to write every single X team, or all the big X.
There's a lot. I think I've plumbed the depths.
I mean, like if somebody was going to say write an X book, and you've only got 5 issues, that's the way to cover everything. And
he was totally living out my fantasy.
Right,
and
that's
boy.
Exactly what I probably would have done. It's like, no, I need Iceman in, and no Cyclops can be in there and be a dick. And,
and also the not having continuity part was like the best part of that, because
and then you've got to explain Marvel's wacky continuity just by making mutant explain it.
That was very clever, Max. I thought that was
thank you.
It was a really cool way to do it. And as Rebecca said, all the X titles really cool to see. I love the little Iceman hand in the bucket. I just read it recently. Rebecca, did you have any?
Yeah. So while I was reading those, and obviously Moon Knight's on my mind as well, I thought that. I think it's really interesting how you use the narrative voice a lot, and all of your characters seem to be able to combine. Well, all the books, not the characters necessarily, seem to be able to combine a sense of sort of either sadness or slight cruelty, depending on who, but also with this incredible empathy as well, and the sense of humor. And I wondered if that's very much something from if that's just you.
Yeah.
Like, your sense of humor.
I think with these characters that you're mentioning, all of the Marvel books have been some version of myself. I think they basically kind of perfectly cast me. Who knows where it could have gone, but in terms of up to Moon Knight, I think I was basically cast perfectly. I mean, Bailey from X-Men was based on my own creation, and very much so is sort of like a younger version of me. And then Fool Killer, again, someone I think it's something that I don't know. I wasn't ready yet to write a comic about someone who is like my polar opposite and focus on that. I think I've done it in the past,
but they're still very distinct. I mean, they're not. Like, you wouldn't see Bailey growing up to be Greg.
No,
that's
you
would
not.
I just mean that they all have that.
They have that quality, though, for sure. And I think there's archetypes, and there's sort of like.
They all have that kind of. They're all a bit self-deprecating. They all seem to understand. What I meant about the narrative structure is they all seem to understand themselves in a way.
For sure, very self-aware.
Even Bailey, yes, and I think that's what I meant about you sort of pulling on from them. From even things
I feel like the comics in general are that I do are in a way kind of can even suffer at times from being extremely self-aware, and I think it's something that either love or hate about my writing, or even if you love me, there are times you're just like, oh God. But still, it's like, I think it's kind of what I have to offer as a creator is that, I guess, self-awareness, you could call it, or trying to be self-aware at least.
Yeah.
The attempt.
Yeah. No, and there's there's I don't want to say similarity, but there is a definite style to your writing, which is really, really cool. So with the X-Man, worst X-Man ever, as you mentioned with Bailey, there are all these, I guess, nods to a lot of subcultures in society, which you see eventually happen. We see it in Moon Knight and in the collective. I think it was issues 196, 197 with Maurice and the band that kind of get together. But yeah, it's is that something that you actively kind of look to write about, or is that something that kind of really just germinates from your writing? Because it's very prevalent in like Polarity. And worst X-Men ever as well. Polarity was brilliant. I read that, and I loved it. It was all, there's a little bit of scathingness towards certain bits of society. Yeah. It's just really cool. Yeah. So sorry. Yeah,
well, I'm kind of lucky enough to like be the age right now of like most superheroes, or like you look at the kind of age that they're trying to have them be, and like sometimes they're in their 20s, but like Peter Parker, like they're like early 30s. I feel like a lot of these dudes, or late 20s, and so I basically, by writing, at least in superhero comics, by kind of like examining some of these cultural things, I think it's mostly because that's what these superheroes would be dealing with if they were really people. I think. Yeah. If Mark Spector was like a 12-year-old boy, a lot of these things would like not be really applicable to him. Or, Bailey is closer to that age, so I tried to have him deal with things that someone who's younger or in high school nowadays. I do think the framing for a character is really important, and it makes it relevant to some degree. And as long as you don't make it so that it can get dated, I feel like. Because there are comics that I feel like that were written in, let's say, the 80s or 90s that are some of my favorite comics. And some of them, it feels terrible and dated. And sometimes you're like, oh, this is a commentary on what's going on at the time. You know what I mean? So I feel like as long as it's something that can be parsed at a later date or applied to a different, like, age, then, you should totally write about it. Because these things are, like, recurring.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, again, take Bailey, for example. I'm just thinking in my head from the issues when he kind of gets almost seduced by Mystique, and it's him being that age, and she's trying to find out who he's kind of into, and this is all I think typical of young teenage boys. So it was really good. I thought it was a really good depiction of someone that age,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I still remember it. I'm like haunted from that age. That was like my worst age in life. I've gone through like the hardest year of my life this year. Yeah. But I still feel like Bailey's age was the worst. Like like between 14 and 16 or 17. I forget how old he was. I think he was like 6.
I think
it was, or maybe he just turned 18.
Right.
17.
I thought he was younger.
I don't remember a lot of things from my comics.
Yeah, he seems quite young.
To understand.
Yeah.
He's an amorphous teenager, is the point.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was.
So was it that obviously was it that awkwardness around that age that made it very difficult for you?
Oh yeah, totally. It's just like it's weird. Like I had a atypical sort of tortured teenage years because I was actually sort of I guess you could say I wasn't I was actually one of the more popular kids in my school because of my band. I was like that dude in the band, so like but I was very 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 morally outraged by a lot of what I saw going on. There was a lot of dark stuff going on in my high school. So I had like the mentality of like a guy who was essentially picked on and bullied every day. There was some of that, by the way, of course. No matter what group you run with, you're going to get some of that. But it was like my inner alienation was so strong that it didn't really matter. I was typically, what one would call like a geek or something, because I was a geek in my tastes. You know what I mean? The things I liked it's just that those things were becoming cool. You know what I mean? Like punk music, like the punks were no longer like ostracized. They were like becoming the cool kids at school. So it was like it was a weird transitional phase.
Okay. I'm just curious, Max, were you like in high school, were you like a bit of a troublemaker for the teachers? Like, were you a bit of a talk back and stuff?
Not like offensive, offensive. Just like didn't pay attention. Always working on like on stuff for my my band. Like I would just be drawing flyers in class, writing and coming up with my own stuff. I just am like laughing, but I was never like a delinquent.
Right.
Necessarily, which I think is awesome. Not to put that down.
I think I was probably the only delinquent.
Oh, Rebecca's had a very coloured,
awesome.
coloured past. Yeah,
I looked up to them. I related to them a lot more.
Yeah. I had a very troubled tween life, and my mom died when I was 11. So, and then I got sent to an extremely rich boarding school. So
yes.
With a broad Yorkshire accent and no idea. Yeah, but I didn't get a lot of trouble for it, but I was a total delinquent, and in a lot of, but everyone let me off because of my mom, and so I got away with it a lot.
Yeah, Tommy, sorry, Max.
Oh no, I was just going to say that's rough.
Yeah.
It is, but there's nothing you can do. You know, it's just like it's life, isn't it?
You killed it. Here you are.
Exactly. Right. But you do realize when you're my age that sometimes these things make you who you are.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely.
And
thank God.
Yeah. We have a vast demographic, Max. We have Connor as well. Like, I just want to put it out to also Connor and Tommy. Like, I'm just curious because it always I don't know, intrigues me how you see people today, like yourself, Max. You know, writer or a comic, musician as well, and just kind of imagine how they were at school and like kind of relate that to when you're at school, like what sort of groups they would be in. It always intrigues me. So like Tommy, you're a teacher now as well. How were you? Were you studious at school? A bit of a rebel?
Yeah, I mean the tradition goes that if you're a teacher, you were probably doing okay in school, but I was the average kid, and I was. Honestly, Max, I identify with you quite a bit because we're about the same age.
Yep.
I started listening to Say Anything with your second album. I think this came out about the time that I graduated from high school. But
cool.
I'm sorry, I'm going to be so terrible right now. I'm forgetting the name, but it's the
okay.
The boy that can be anything.
Is a real boy.
Yeah, is a real boy, right?
Yeah.
Because I think like Shiksa's on that, and
it is. That's the one that they. Yeah, that's the one. That's often the converter.
Yeah, and so anyway, so and I was in a couple bands in high school too, and we phased out, and then a couple bands in college as well, and it was a bunch of fun, but. So I had a little bit of that in me, but I was pretty much showing the class on time. I also, like Rebecca, went to a private high school, but in Metro Detroit, Michigan. And so there was a little bit of slacking, but I mean I'm an English teacher now.
Nice. I love that.
I pretty much played the straight and narrow, but at least when it comes to comics, though. It's just very quickly. I love that I was, I read comics when I was in high school a bit, and then I got back into it in college, and then dropped for a while, and then got back into it in my adult life. But now, as a point of connection with my students, it's just fantastic because I have such fascinating conversations with students from all different backgrounds. Revolving around comics, and a lot of that honestly has to do with the MCU and the DC universe that's coming around. But it's great because I can push them in, and Max, I gotta say, you picked up a couple issues because I told my students to buy your comics. So
thank you. Please, we need the young ones.
Yes.
What I mean?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely. And Connor, you were a truant, I'd imagine. You were trouble for a lot of the teachers, I'm sure.
First 2 years of high school, I fell into a really bad crowd, and it ruined me for a while. I saw a psychologist from like age 12 up to last year.
Oh, right.
I had a pretty rough go of it, but and put a bit too much pressure on myself to do well in school. But
yeah,
I got out of it alive somehow. I'm doing okay, I guess.
That's the important thing.
Comics.
Getting out.
Yeah, exactly. And it's right. It's trying to make sense of where you fit in and what's important in life as well. So that's really good. Well, Max, also as well. Look, we're not doing an Isla. We did a fantastic Isla with Jacen Burrows, artist on Moon Knight. Awesome fellow. We took him over to the island and we asked him to choose 4 of his Desert Island books. Now, I remember when we were kind of chatting, Max, as well. So I wanted to actually just throw it out here anyway. You gave me your island books, your Isla books, and I've got down here. Well, they're kind of like vast, right? So they encapsulate the arc. So we got Preacher, Invisibles, Ultimate Spider-Man, and Finder. So I guess in a very compact version of Isla Ra, let's start with Preacher. What makes Preacher a very important comic book for you?
Oh, well, it completely changed my life. I think it was I remember reading it when I was like 12 or 13 years old. And like, my parents obviously didn't know that it was up. So I got to read it, and I read it as it was coming out. And it was like my first exposure to, I think before... It was around the same time I was reading Sandman, but like Garth Ennis is so much different than Neil Gaiman. It's like so much less lyrical and more direct. It's something that like a 12-year-old boy can really latch onto. And, even though it's so completely dark, it's like, it's immediate. So I felt a kinship in that kind of storytelling. And I feel like the values are good. That's really rare, where you can be that messed up of a storyteller and still give kids something to look to. I remember looking up to Jesse and like still feeling like he was a flawed character, especially as I grow older. You look back and you read it over and you're like, okay, he was not like, he wasn't a perfect guy by any means, kind of a dick. Yeah. But like, a lot of similarities that now as I'm grown man, I kind of look back on it and I feel, like a kinship to that character. And it's a completed story. It's a story that's really entertaining. So if you were stuck on an island, like you would just kind of like, it both has like a familiar warmth and then like it would like, stimulate you to some degree. Yeah. It's pretty weird and jacked up. And then like, what was the second one?
Invisibles. Is it Invisibles?
Yeah, that's my favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's like my Bible.
Yeah?
Pretty much. Like, it got me back into spirituality and kind of defined my lack of politics. When I basically, because there was a long time I was basically just like, I'm just going to live life and not really define it as anything which quantify or explain in terms of like what I believe or what I want for the world. Just like, I'm just gonna like try to do my best. And then I read Invisibles and I was like, okay, not only can I like explain this, but there's an entire comic based around like basically exactly what I believe. Yeah. And it helped me learn some other things that I didn't really think about that I later applied to my life that literally like helped me become a better person. So every time I read it, I find new things. And I feel like, if I ever felt down or if I needed to be like invigorated on the island, so to speak, I would just reread Invisibles.
Yeah. So you reread these regularly, same like with Preacher as well?
I do. Yeah. I'm actually rereading Preacher right now. I'm due for I reread Invisibles like every 5 years or something like that.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm a big rereader, like almost to a fault, like especially with comics. Like I've read a lot of my favorite stuff, sometimes over new stuff.
Yeah.
To the point where I like fall behind really drastically in
yeah.
like superhero books. It sucks.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, that's that. I think that's the
they're
problem
so
we're
good.
all having. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love rereading.
It's hard.
Yeah.
There's a comfort to it. So it's like going to comfort food. It's like something
Exactly.
you know, you know you're going to enjoy it. And I've always I started reading really late, so I read things a lot. If I like
you gotta like add to the comfort food thing, so you want to discover new comfort food that can later be reread.
Yeah.
But it's like that duality, you know. So
cool.
Definitely.
And then we have, you know, obviously one of the big two, Ultimate Spider-Man is your other pick. I mean, I'm sure I actually haven't read it, but I've heard it's absolutely phenomenal from everyone. And I guess that whole run. Sorry, I'm really terrible. That is Miles Morales, isn't it? It is. It is. Yeah.
It changes at one point into being him.
Okay.
I will not spoil how, but it does.
Right.
It does not start out with Miles Morales.
Oh, okay. And this was really memorable for you because of and the kinship with Miles, or
no, I think if anything, I have more of a kinship with Peter Parker, who like it does start out with Peter, and I feel like it's really means a lot to me because it is another book I've read a million times, and it's kind of the ultimate comfort food for me. It represents what I love about Marvel to some degree, and what I love about superhero comics to an incredible degree, because it's really, you know, it was revolutionary when it came out. It definitely like is every Spider-Man comic that's ever been written, but and yet it is. It fit perfectly. So, you know, I feel like it has a really deep intelligence and sense of danger, but it also has comforting quality. It is a Spider-Man book. It's a Marvel book, so you get that kind of like, I feel like Spider-Man is one of the more comforting characters in the world. So you can tell that like on this island, I'm not going to like necessarily be bringing like, you know, like experimental comics, because you know, it's just like if you're going to be stuck with, you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
Some would.
Yeah. Sorry, you still there?
Oh, I am.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
In full effect.
In surround sound. And just finally, also as well, Max, before I'll throw it to one of the other co-hosts. The final one was Finder, and this is the one that I'm least familiar with. So, what is it?
It's amazing.
Yeah, what is it about? Give us a quick rundown and why it again is important for you.
Oh, it's extremely dense, and smart, and it's also another kind of comfort food book, but in a completely different way. And actually, I still have yet to get through the like second gigantic collection of it. I like it came out in these gigantic omnibus whatever collections. So I would bring it because I've sort of read it, so I know it's good.
Yeah.
The art is incredible, and I haven't finished it. So therefore, I will have something at least semi-new on the island to read.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's. I love how you think. You've thought it out on the island. You know.
Yeah.
I got to have something.
Totally. And it's also it's a female creator, so it's like a lot less, you know, a lot less balls. You know.
Awesome.
There's gonna be a point where I'm just like, I've had enough. I've had enough of the testosterone, even if it's like Grant Morrison's testosterone, which is pretty enlightened balls. You know?
I'm going to have to make a little reference there as well, because again, Polarity Max, one of the things that made me laugh was when Tim goes to Lily, you know, I like you because you got balls. And she says something.
Yes.
And I don't know.
Females can have balls too.
Yeah, I know, but it's just like...
Balls for sure. Thank you.
Yeah, anyway.
My wife has balls.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. Anyway, Rebecca, Tommy, Connor, do you want to ask anything on Max's previous runs before Moon Knight?
Max, I have to admit I'm not super familiar with your previous runs with with Fool Killer, but I can say that when I heard that you coming on to write this last series of Moon Knight, or this last volume of Moon Knight, I have a really great relationship with my local comic book shop, and Gavin and Deanna that run it. They're great friends, and they do such a great job. And even they, who can find anything, they truly can find anything, have had such a hard time finding these final issues of that 5-run series of Fool Killer. So I think I have issue 5, and I think I have issue 2.
It's kind of cool. I feel cool.
Yeah, it's like it's super rare. It's like it's like a trading card game or something. But
exactly.
I'm missing a few of those issues, and I just want to tell you that mostly because of Rebecca, who has been such a proponent and supporter of that. Both the first 30 episodes of ITK. I've really tried to find that night. So I'm looking forward to reading it. At least. So,
thank you. Yeah, it wraps up pretty nicely.
All of my questions have to do with Moon Knight.
Okay.
I think that you are. So I at this point I don't have too much to ask. But.
Okay.
I'm here. I'm here for it. I'm up for it.
Fair enough. Look, quickly, I just want to add as well, because Max has done a lot of just catching up. I really like also Killstrike. That was.
Thank you.
I found that a very different, absolutely different run to. I mean, not that all the other ones are the same. I'm just saying that it had a really light comedic touch to it.
Yes.
And. I guess first is the artist Logan Fer. I can't pronounce his name.
Yeah,
sorry.
He's so good.
Yeah. So when he collaborated with you, did that mean did he come up with the plot with you, or was that more the design of Killstrike?
No, the plot was me, but he totally designed Killstrike based on the idea that he was the ultimate '90s superhero. So there wasn't. It's not you can't. He totally aced that on his own. You know what I mean? No one. Yeah. That was just basically I described it. He aced it. Yeah. So no, I did the plot. I've yet to really collaborate on plot with a co-creator.
Okay. Right.
Is the thing about me.
Yeah.
But I mean, except for editors, especially at Marvel. Because editing is a very serious thing.
Well, if we can,
when it comes to we'll go there.
Yeah, if we can, we'll go there. Especially with the last 2 issues of Moon Knight.
Yes.
We'll be heading there as well. Look, for Loonies that don't know, Killstrike, it's out by Boom Studios. It was a few years ago, and as Max said, it was based on a really funny premise of this guy wanting to get this 90s comic from his mum's place because it had gone up in price because it was so bad. It had been burnt and destroyed by everyone that it actually became rare. So he wanted to go to his mum's place, went up into the attic. For some reason, Killstrike comes to life. And the closest I can liken Killstrike to, Max, would be, I guess, Drax from the movies in Guardians of the Galaxy. This big, lumping piece of, muscled meat, who's slightly out of touch with the world, and he just enjoys. He only knows killing and basically killing and vengeance.
And boobs.
And boobs.
Boobs
that's it. And so it's a really fun tale. It's very. We'll talk about it again as well. Max, you do inject a lot of humor into your stories, into your and there was some there was some humor in Moon Knight as well. But with Killstrike, for me, I found that came to the forefront, and it was
for sure.
Yeah, there were moments there where literally, I don't often laugh out loud, but while reading, because then I just look like an idiot. But but at home, it did bring a smile.
But you LOL.
I LOL.
Almost LOL.
That's it. I almost.
That's cool. I love that.
Yeah. So Killstrike was a really good thing. Very different, I thought. But yeah, I guess I wanted to ask, was it a love letter to, obviously a love letter to the 90s, and are you a big fan of the 90s comics?
I was, I mean, I feel like they have a lot of importance to me, and I think they have a lot of importance to comics in general. They were the first comics that I really got into, because me and my friends like collected Spawn and like, I would go to Golden Apple in LA and we would get like, Wildcats, Spawn, Youngblood, the works, and like Witchblade, the first, and I feel like it was just every time you bought one, you felt cool. Every time you bought one, you're like, yeah, Spawn #1. So I just feel like, the joy I got from buying those comics, definitely later, that's the feeling I would get when buying some pretentious comic that I, now like. Yeah. But they definitely helped me fall in love with the medium. And I think it's important, even though a lot of people, it's become like this thing where you're like, or a lot of people have decided that this is like the worst time in comics history. But in reality, it kept people interested. It Image came out of that time, like a lot of creator agency, and then also like Wildstorm as a company is the root of so many great things about superhero comics in general, and that came out of that time. Like if it wasn't for Wildstorm, you wouldn't have the Authority, and you wouldn't have all those Warren Ellis and all these creators coming up and doing that kind of writing. So I feel like, and even Alan Moore like wrote Spawn and Grant Morrison. So it's like there was this weird crossover. Yeah, like there was this weird crossover with like all the best writers. Like Alan Moore did Supreme. So I think even those writers recognized that there was something special about that, and it's carried over. Like the edginess was later sort of claimed by people like me, who can now incorporate edginess without hopefully it being as cheesy.
Less pouchy and
a few less pouches. Just like,
I think I don't know. I think the edginess is now tempered with kind of like a more modern realization that other people exist, and you don't have to be this kind of like angry teen boy.
You don't have to kill them. You don't necessarily kill them.
And even if you do kill, there's still this kind. I don't know. I think the world has moved on, and I think that it's exactly why people like say the Authority is so important, is because it's the ideas that people are taking from the 90s comics that were so amazing, and they're now sort of tempering them into sort of something a bit more rounded.
Yes.
And a bit less off-putting to other audiences, perhaps.
Of course, and it's like
although
the idea behind it.
The Authority changed my life in many ways. So.
That's your wheelhouse.
Me too.
It's the first comic I ever read at the same time as my partner. The person I've now been married to for 18 years, to show my age. Was because we both read comics individually. We both had a full set of Sandman, because everyone my age does. But
as they should.
Right,
exactly.
But the Authority was the one that we were like, I picked it up and went, oh, you should read this, and we're like, absolutely sort of devoured it as it came out. Even the ones even the issues that I now don't like, I'm like, it was still very important at the time.
Huge.
And it was just it was. I think the 90s were a very free way of saying, we're going to play with what you had before. Like, you had all these nice, sweet superheroes. We're going to mess them up.
Yeah.
And now we're getting that kind of combining the two things together.
Exactly. I still love the idea of messing them up, because I feel like the Authority was doing that to the Wildstorm universe. You know what I mean? That's what Warren Ellis was doing. He was like, these characters are kind of inherently like almost politically incorrect in their leaning.
Yeah.
Now the Authority was basically him going, okay, but what if it was like a bunch of kind of like open-minded or sort of leftist people doing, essentially being as hardcore as the, you know what I mean?
And it made you, and it suddenly made you think, like, is Superman PC, and is this like, like, how would it be viewed if you didn't come to it? If this is my hero,
Right,
you know,
exactly.
which
It definitely asks so many questions.
Which was groundbreaking. And so, I mean, like, you know, I laugh at about 90s comics, same as everyone else, but because there was a lot in them that didn't appeal to me. Yeah. But yes. I still read through the 90s, so I was clearly not finding that there wasn't stuff to read.
Yes. Who could forget the swimsuit editions of all your favorite Marvel characters?
Yes.
Look, people are calling for them to come back. They just want men in.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Oh, there were some men in there as well.
Indie. Yeah. You know, it would be like Suicide Girls or something. I feel like they'd try to like go.
Yes.
With it at this point, it'd be like even more American Apparel ads. It'd be even more disturbing. You know?
I'm not behind the call for it. I'm like, that's weird. There's something I'm not sad.
I think it's unnecessary.
Yeah, exactly. Just another couple of things. Just curious about Max as well.
Sure.
Just with the likes of Lucy Dreaming, which was a really, really cool recent run, 5-parter from yourself. And also, even all the way back to Polarity, the story is kind of, to me, there's an opening there. Like there's room for telling more. Is that something that you have ever reconsidered? Actually, returning to either? Yeah.
Those two specifically for Lucy and Polarity. I feel like at some point I would revisit both of those, but it just kind of depends on the demand over time and if people get sick of my face, just basically the sound of my own voice. No, I think if people still care, I will definitely. I've actually thought about doing a sequel to Polarity specifically for a long time, just because it was so autobiographical and like I think obviously followed with some spoke to where everything I've seen since that time would probably be interesting.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. And again, a quick rundown for Loonies that don't know. Polarity, basically about a man, Tim Woods, I think his name. He is an artist, and he finds out that he actually gains, and this will sound familiar to some, he actually gains some degree of superhero powers when he actually is under the influence of drugs. So he will find a bit of crack, or he found a bit of crack in a wheelie bin, I think it was, or a skip in an alley, and he had that to generate his powers. He took pills and such like that. But it just I've lost my train of thought. I just thought it was
he liked drugs.
He liked drugs. Yeah, that's it.
Tim liked drugs. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I've totally lost it. But it's a very.
I would revisit it. I think we were talking about if I would revisit it.
Yes.
And I definitely would. Most of my other things are pretty capped off. Even when I was finishing up Moon Knight, and there's people always say you can always return to a character, but wanted to finish off a part of my whole was wanting to finish off Moon Knight in a way that it was its own thing and it felt finished. And that way, because I like reading things in like a book. It's kind of I'm known to read a character, like for sure. Like I will just read a certain character and continue to read him, like Moon Knight. I've read everything that's come out, but I think each run should kind of feel like its own little mini universe. So I feel like even with Moon Knight, I tried to cap it off in a way that felt like it was over, and then like it's a kind of a different world when someone else picks it up.
Yeah,
because they can do whatever they want. You know what I mean? Like,
well, and that's the beauty of Moon Knight. We say it over and over again as well. What we found is that each of the volumes are so distinct, right? And each of the writers and creators bring different things to Moon Knight each time, and I think that is so good. I think there'll be nothing worse than just rehashing the same ideas over and over. And so what the beauty of Moon Knight is that each of them are really, really distinct. Like you've got Warren Ellis, you've got Bendis, Houston, and of course the Jeff Lemire run, which was just recent as well. All focuses on different aspects. So Yeah, that's one of the big pluses, and I think and we'll get to it now, I guess. I think your Moon Knight run, really does close off nicely. It does round off really well, especially for issue 200.
Yes.
Yeah. So actually, I guess we might as well really get into it now. So before we do that, we might just take a quick short break. And what I want to do, just before we do go off the break, I wanted to give a big shout out to one of the Loonies again. And he's in a band called Clerics of Ohm. And they have a song which they have created and wrote specifically on Moon Knight. So they actually write songs on all their favourite pop culture comic book characters, and Moon Knight is one of the first songs that they've written. So
awesome.
Yeah, it's so cool. So let's play it now, and we'll take a short break, and we'll be right back.
Shameful Hi, this is Dave.
And I'm Stu, and we're from the Signal of Doom.
We're proud members of the Collective, and you're listening to Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast.
Welcome back, everyone. Big shout-outs to Clerics of Home. We'll have a link to that in the description. They're on YouTube. Imagine they're on places like Spotify and all those other music places of music. So now, it's the big Moon Knight 200 time. We're going to get into a bit of review, talking about it, and then the retrospectives. I think the best way to start that off is with, sadly not here right now, but the lovely Chad did a little bit of a bare bones. So I'll just... pass it away to that distant self being brought here from the nether void.
Moon Knight, issue 200. Written by Max Bemis. Art by Paul Davidson. Guest art by Jacen Burrows, Jeff Lemire, and Bill Shinkovich. Color art by Matt Miller and Jeff Lemire. Letter is VC's Corey Pettit, cover artist is Becky Cloonan, and the design is by Nick Russell. Flashback to the Isla Ra, fresh after the clash of the Sun King and Moon's Knight. We find a toothless and scorched Mark, briefing Patient 86 about his new lodging. Being a quasi-max asylum, maybe the vet could find absolution there, even after he spits the concept. The truth in this matter wants help as well, and inquires politely about his own placement, cellmates with his pyrokinetic comrade. At the asylum, garbed in jumpsuits and beige cardigans, the group therapy begins. What starts as a simple assessment on the entire event on the island, and even Mark, the longer the yarn rolls on, we find the Sun King unnerved and agitated by the verdict until the finale. Meanwhile, truth sits as a mountain of solemnity. He has no excuses to make. Right after a heart-to-heart between supernatural juggernauts, Uncle Ernst swings open the hatch to the cell, bested by society's sinners. Old money, old school, old tricks. Flash forward to the gentrified streets in the snowfall on Bedford Avenue. All-star adorned 86 gives way to a bull-rushing Mark in combat boots. Knight takes King to the ground, but they're playing the same colors here. Sliding his hand, the Sun King immolates society miscreants. Flaming hand outstretched, no masters here as the crazy in Mark sees the crazy in Patient 86. Piloting some beastly cycle, the escaped inmate lets Mark in on Ernst's plan. The escaped, shunning his own god, no god and no mercy for the old Nazis. Mark plays ball, but he's still tripping while convinced the bike has angel wings and his fire-toting anarchist is a wildebeest. The makeshift moon cult from Isla Ra is on parade to Marlene's, headed by Mark and her previous kidnapper. That she immediately hits square in the eyes with Mace. While the loony bin guards Sun King, Marlene and Mark talk this out, but Mark is given an artifact of great power before an actual plan is hashed out. Beatrice hands her father a handmade comic, starring her family. In this continuum, Moon Girl continued her father's work. Obviously restocked in his power of crazy, the boys are back in town, with the Hellcarrier bearing down on their position. A wave of hyper-violence goes full tsunami as our inmates take ground against the machinations of malice. Such violence that it even makes K-Man a tad uneasy. From street to crashed carrier, the white-garbed misfits annihilate the Ernst Inquisition, led by a hierarchy of madmen. During this onslaught, Patient 86 tries to give a look into his life, just a glimpse into how he was manipulated into what seemed like the only path to take. Straight into the hands of the truth. Pumped full of some blue ink, a sick venom as it's called, of mind control, pours into the muscled maestro. The effect of the ichor, revealed by the psychotropic barrage of its timeline. A Nazi artifact that can weaponize mind control across mediums, creating a tainted meme, which, given nearly a century to stew and corrupt, has led here. Mark realizes the far-reaching effect across his own timeline, and exactly how humanity has suffered from this cancer. In a surge of heroic fury, Mark, led by a vestigial ghost of Jake Lockley, unleashes a punishing assault on the tattooed titan, wrapping the marionette in its strings and stunning it with a blast of blue controlled by a shade of Grant. Without a wasted attisecond, Mark closes the gap, jumping to slam the truth prone with a meteoric kick while channeling Khonshu's wrath. In a brutal final act, the Fist of Khonshu severs the hold on Truth's psyche, snapping him out of the trance through a vicious compound fracture. In celebration and wonder at overpowering these odds, Mark holds his sides in laughter, only a slip in the remnants of blue corruption. Just in time to see her boyfriend make a fool of himself, Marlene bursts into the chamber, sound and fury following the Blondine memo. With a lot of persuasion and tenfold that in mercy, Mark and Marlene work to the conclusion that the deposed Sun King needs a fresh start. Mark, as an escort, shirtless and dazed, Patient 86 returns to the asylum. The orderlies ask if this lunatic would like 3 hots and a cot as well. For once, Mark Spector is fine. He's coming home, under the watchful eye of Khonshu.
Thank you, Chad. Thank you, the power of Chad there with his synopses or bare bones of issue 200, a monumental issue here. This caps off Max Bemis's run, and as we always do at Lunapix, we basically, obviously, we had we had Chad doing the narration, and we'll just talk about, I guess, the main things that we gathered from this, and we actually have a special moment here because we actually have the writer Max here with us. So this will be fun.
I know. Better like it.
Yeah. So, anyone want to jump in first as to what one of the themes or one of the things I found quite interesting in this issue 200?
Okay.
Yeah.
Get it out.
Flick it through.
I'll start, Max, as well. Okay. How about we have a couple of surprises here, and I'm more alluding towards the awesome cameos by Jeff Lemire and Bill Sienkiewicz.
Yes.
Now, was this? How did this come about? Like, we spoke earlier about editorials and you working with the editors. Yeah. Was it something that you requested, or was it something that they said, Max, okay, look, we're going to have this in the 200 issue, and you pick kind of a page? How did it come about?
I think it was like a mutual decision that might have originated with me, because I was talking to Bill on Twitter, because we follow each other, and that's what's comic creator life is really cool on Twitter, because it's kind of a small world. So, the fact that he's like the seminal artist and that I was currently writing the book, we sort of linked up.
Yep.
And I was like, would you? And he was like, yeah.
Wow.
So I basically had my editors reach out to him. And then I kind of wrote that in. And it just happened to fit with something that, I actually already really wanted to do in the final issue, which was like the Diatrice art. And Jeff's is so important. His run is so important to my run, and he's such an important creator to me. So, I think, they probably were already planning on, or may have even mentioned that they wanted to get multiple artists on the book. So I think a mutual decision, and it's one of those things that you kind of tend to do in the 200th issue.
Yeah.
Or like any 100th issue of any long-running superhero book.
What an honor too. And just to clarify, is Bill Sienkiewicz and Max? Of course, I meant that for you. What an honor to write for the 200th issue. But just to clarify, is Bill Sienkiewicz's credit the final the splash page?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Right, and then it's because Lemire. Geez, am I reading this right? Lemire did 2/3 of the issue, and Burrows did roughly the first third.
Lemire just did one page.
The one page, yeah.
But it's an important one, and he's emulating Diatrice's art.
Yes. Yeah. It's a splash page showing.
Okay, jeez, Boyd, that's okay. Because that's first of all, that was one of my questions. Is it Diatrice?
Oh yeah,
Diatrice.
Diatrice.
I kept on calling it Diatrice. Diatrice.
Yes, it is Diatrice.
And I absolutely have a question about that name in a moment, but
of course,
I was super curious about that because knowing Burrows' art, I see it so clearly in these first couple pages, these Isla Ra pages, and then with Ernst and the I'm not going to say the French. I'm an English teacher. The sadist group. But then it does change when we have. And I was just so curious. Is that still Burrows? Because it just seemed like the quality of the characters changed in such a way. But so thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it changed. But no, it was an honor completely to write the issue as well. Like I definitely acknowledge that. I mean, I feel really lucky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you gave such great credits to your predecessors too.
They're amazing.
Oh boy, I'm blanking on it now. But they're the Dr. Lemire. Oh man,
yeah.
I laughed out loud.
Yeah,
I laughed out loud. But in just like, wow, that's
I
so
laughed
cool
as well.
that you had.
Yeah.
Had that humility, and it was so cool. So.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Sorry? I got a question about the Sun King.
Yes.
I absolutely laughed like super hard at the second page, like the 4 panels going down. Was this always a plan to have him kind of become good by the end of the run? Like, was this the end game for the character always?
Definitely not. A lot of what I do is improvised as a writer. And with Marvel, you kind of have to think a few issues ahead. But going into the run, I kind of had no idea. It's something that I've become weirdly disciplined about, is being kind of a method writer. I try not to write from like outlines or anything like that. So unless I really have to, I don't really know what's going to happen.
Cool.
There might be a few things that I know, or maybe it emerges over time. But actually, I have a friend who I was going through this whole thing, which we'll explore, I'm sure, at some point when we get more into it. Mm-hmm. And I had a friend, and I realized that he reminded me so much of Sun King. And I'm like, wow, and I'm like, I wanted to I was going through sort of stuff with this friend, and also coming to a lot of realizations about, what Sun King represented being less of a threat to the world or to my own life than I thought it was at the beginning. Because when I first started writing the book, what I saw as kind of the nemesis of good, kind of by the end of the run morphed into something that was more like a tangential sort of like spice or flavor of life, as opposed to like this arch nemesis. So I kind of was like, wait a, like things like Ernst came up where I'm like, well, he's way worse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and yeah.
So actually, because again, casting back, I remember Connor and I picking apart the article where it was the first interview I think that you had with Marvel about the Moon Knight series coming out, and you mentioned something about Moon Knight. He'll finally get his kind of like Joker version, and so we thought, okay, it's obviously the Sun King because the moon and the sun was opposite. But as we read the series, Ernst started kind of topping him as the nemesis, and so there was a bit of a discussion within our group as to, okay, so who is meant to be the Joker? Is it Ernst or is it
or is it the truth?
Yeah,
I mean, anyone could be, but I feel like it is Sun King. But I feel like in the end, one of the things that we were talking about going into this was, Moon Knight similar to Batman and wanting to give him a rogues gallery, a little bit more solid of a rogues gallery. I mean, anyone who's into Moon Knight kind of knows his rogues gallery, but to new readers, like Bushman is kind of like one of the only few people who you can like think of initially. You know what I mean? You're like, boom, Bushman. Yeah. So, and he's like, was out of the picture. So we were like, we want to give him a Joker. So I feel like Sun King is that, but in the end, they kind of became friends because it isn't Batman. It isn't the DC universe. And Moon Knight is not, to me, Moon Knight does not have actually that much in common with Batman except for like their like, not their abilities and sort of superficial resemblance, but so I feel like in our
world,
among
friends.
Maybe
Here.
Yes, I mean, I think he could.
That was our one reference.
Yeah, that's it. One Batman reference per episode.
I feel like he could. I feel like in our world, these two polar opposite characters could actually like have some kind of an alliance, and I think that's kind of like a Marvel thing. Like, there's a lot of like cohabitation in the Marvel universe with like different people with different identities and stuff like that. So
it makes for a very interesting case of how writers in the future will handle the Sun King as well, which I find quite exciting. Similar with all the other the characters that you have actually created during this run as well. So it really does kind of. Yeah, I mean, it really opens it up as to what you can do with them. Very, very cool indeed.
Thank you.
Now, Ray, if I can just add on to this briefly. So, Max, with Ernst, with, let's see, issue 199, maybe it was 198, I know that in 200, when Moon Knight and Sun King have their interaction, and Moon Knight tells Sun King that he killed Ernst. When I saw that panel when Mark was in the apartment of that New Yorkers, and I saw that as Mark just like castrating Ernst. But did he kill him? Did he kill him?
I think we left it to the point where it was actually a heart attack.
Okay.
In my interpretation. Okay. That killed Ernst, but I think he probably wouldn't have had it if he wasn't stabbed in the junk. And then also, like whatever, I think we were more so just Moon Knight's whole thing with killing is so like ambiguous. So I think we were just more so going, he orchestrated or had something to do with Ernst's death. It's why I think he says I kind of killed him too. Because he didn't exactly cut his throat, which he should have. I would have. But no, he was definitely behind it,
Okay, because that was the sticking point for me, because reading your series, I was really cued into this idea that, all right, Moon Knight's going to have his Joker. Bemis is gonna create this character that's going to be not just the antithesis of Moon Knight, but it's going to be like truly just this like creepy, spooky, cryptic. And so I thought, all right, Sun King, awesome, Egyptian mythology. And then saw the truth, and I thought, wow, a superpowered, maybe he's an inhuman, maybe he's a mutant, we don't know. But then the surprise of Ernst after the first arc was like super powerful. And I really enjoyed Ernst's character as this person that Mark trusted in his childhood that ultimately would destroy Mark's life, you know, if Mark didn't have the individuals in his adult life to help him piece it back together. You know, Indeed. No pun intended there. But but to that point, I saw Ernst, I should say, as this kind of eternal character. And so I started thinking like, okay, Ernst is going to be the Joker. Ernst is going to be the one that, you know, 100 years from now is going to be the one that's coming back like Dark Knight's Metal from some other universe. Nice. And it's going to be Ernst that's the one, because he is the antagonist. And I'll tell you what, and I don't know if this is your credit.
He definitely is the antagonist of his life. Well, he's like, I feel like if anyone could be pigeonholed as like the guy who honestly Mark is up against in terms of the effect on his life, it'll always be Ernst, because Ernst was the one who hurt him as a child and basically created the core trauma that, you know, caused him to split. So it's like, or contributed towards the split. So I think, you know, ultimately he'll carry around that pain for the rest of his life. So I think there's something to what you're saying. So to whether he's alive or not, or they bring him back or they don't bring him back, I mean, he's still, you know, if you want to see him as the Joker, I think that interpretation is definitely valid, because he certainly he's the thing that Mark feels, you know, makes him less than other people.
Right. True, but I felt it was really powerful to actually have a Nazi get killed.
Yes.
So, you know, on the other side. So
thank you. Good.
But yeah,
I like doing it.
Yeah. I'm totally up with him being brought back, but I think for me the Sun King has more potential because he ended up in this weird sort of alliance, because it is something you see happen, but not very often. Right. Where they come, it's like this like weird mirror for Mark, and then there is that all the Egyptian mythology to play on if someone wants to, and
he could totally go dark again. I kind of wanted to set one person who's really great.
Right, he could flip on a dime. Yeah.
Yes, he's totally a Magneto, or like even sometimes like the Kingpin. You know, can be an enemy.
Yeah,
and I like he had a man bun by the end.
Yes,
right.
His tastes evolved.
Yeah,
and he had the Isla Raw look. You know, the Miami Vice. So we wanted his style to really have its own voice.
Yeah,
Max, I'll tell you, I don't know if this is to your credit or if this is to the artist's credit, but it's the final panel of issue 194, which is where we see the Ernst massacre in the basement of the synagogue. It's that final panel where Beatrice, previously, you know, is talking to her now accepted father, or maybe perhaps we should interpret this as the surrogate father, as Mark. And she says something, I don't have the issue in front of me, but she says something like, you know, don't let that keep you up at night or something. But then we see the eyes of Uncle Ernst, and then we flip to this panel of Mark, and he is stuck, and he can't fall asleep, but he's there next to his daughter that's snuggling with him. And it's just that, oh my gosh, Max, I know that you're a father, but it's just that, it's that feeling of doubt. It's that feeling of, oh my gosh, I've got bills to pay.
Oh yeah.
I have things that I'm not prepared to attack tomorrow, and here I am protecting my child in the bed.
Thank you. That is exactly what I was trying to capture. So thank you.
Awesome. And Ray, I know that you now kind of feel this, but Max, I can't tell you enough. Like that, like, oh my gosh, that didn't solidify my love of Moon Knight. But it solidified my continuing love of Moon Knight, because it's just, oh my gosh, I can't tell you enough. It was that was the moment where I knew that for me, Ernst was the Joker. If we have to keep making those references.
Makes complete sense. I love that interpretation.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
So Sun King all the way. I'm all into the Egyptian mythos and the Egyptian.
He's like his
superficial
Joker. It's like on a superficial level.
Yeah.
It's like he's his personal Joker for like Mark, but the Sun King is that more can actually do the whole of Moon Knight.
Yeah.
That, you know.
Yeah. No,
exactly.
That makes sense. That issue 194 was quite. That was a really closest to it really turned. It was a really dark turn for it. And
I think it took me like 2 months to even talk about it.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't talk about it. Like, just leave me alone.
It was really, really good, really intense stuff. My gosh. And Max, look, I guess we can lump 199 and 200. And what we mentioned was how important these issues were for you. And the difference in tone. I mean, a lot of the Looney fans as well, there's been a lot of discussion, particularly of 199 and 200, because it seems to be, there is a lot of, I'll let you explain it. It was a very dark moment in your life.
I mean, I think things went surreal, and I feel like that probably contributed to any sort of change in tone. And I feel like a lot of the time, some of my favorite comics, whether it be The Invisibles or any of those Vertigo books, like in the last few issues, you kind of get bonkers. And we didn't have the luxury of having like, another 6-issue arc just as an epilogue. You know what I mean? So I really had to like put in everything that I wanted to say in these last 2 issues completely. And definitely, I mean, at the time of 198, I was experiencing like a full mental collapse. And by the time we did, or 199, I'm sorry. And by the time we did 200, I was really far gone. I wrote a lot of 200, like kind of in bed, shaking, like in like a weird room by myself. Like the editing process was really harrowing.
Tell us. About that. That'll be very interesting to hear because, again, very different issues. So, how did the Marvel editors how did they factor into it? And
I mean, the thing is, the editors are awesome, and they definitely like helped me shape this whole run into something that I'm really proud of. And even these last 2 issues, like at the end of the day, when I read them, I'm like, wow. I can't believe we did it. We put it all together. I was in a terrible place, and good on them for getting it together. But I will say that there was, I don't think they were used to like actually people with mental illnesses. That's how I would put it. Like I think there's a certain like Hunter Thompson quality to me that sort of eluded them towards the end of the run,
right?
Because it was like. I mean, I think, like, even listening to your guys' podcast, I feel like the reason people liked my run at all, there are other runs that did certain things better, like Warren Ellis's was, like, action. It was, like, such a great action. And, like, Jeff was very much so, like, a heartfelt sort of, like, emotional journey. And I felt like mine was about ideas and about spirituality and sort of just cultural ideas and sort of a little bit meta with what Moon Knight means, and it was also about myself. I think I've been really evident from the beginning that it's kind of like an animal man. It was like an animal man type journey where I basically I realized this character was a lot like me. That a lot of readers don't understand that, or at least the ones who sort of nay my run on the book. It's not that I imprinted myself onto Mark, it's that Mark imprinted himself onto me, and that I knew I was like Mark from reading Moon Knight for so long. I was like, wow, there's a reason I've been given this job and it's because I actually am like really similar to this character.
Yeah.
So as an experiment, I kind of like made I let the comic interweave with my own life. Just think that a lot of my favorite writers, in a sort of magical sense, whether it be Grant Morrison, Alan Moore, Neil Gaiman, they're like, and I thought, you know, just because it's a superhero comic doesn't mean we can't do that, because when we started the book, the frame of reference was Swamp Thing. It wasn't like the Avengers movie, you know? So I think by the end, there's a little bit more call to make it like a really Marvel-y book.
Yeah.
Whereas I kind of wanted to take it even weirder than it ended up, if you can believe that. And it ended in kind of a battle of wills.
Weird.
Yeah, that's it. Keep it weird.
That was my philosophy. Yeah, it was my philosophy, and I feel like, to whatever end, I would never. Everyone's just trying to do their job in the scenario, but I do feel like it was kind of ironic because basically you had Mark losing his mind in the book, and then you had me losing my mind in real life.
And
I was having this fight against what I felt was like a little bit of an iron fist, not to be too harsh about it. And so in a way, my fight against that got translated into Mark's fight. So there's a lot of anger towards that and things that came out, but also it was towards other things that were going on in my life more than anything, because my editors are nice guys. Like that I got into that shtick with. They're actually nice people. But in my life, I was just leaving my band. The source of the breakdown was that I was like basically realized that I was in kind of a toxic environment with music, and I wanted to do comics full time. So I basically was in this process of severing. We were canceling a tour. I went to the UK and had these kind of like these really crazy shows that ended disastrously for me personally, where I ended up kind of like marooned in the UK without a passport. So it really was like my family was going through this insane dark time, and Moon Knight became my way to fight against that and to be like, you know what, I'm going to make it through. The same way Mark makes it through this like really harrowing time in his life. And for 199, even though it's pretty dense and hard to understand, the thing that I will reveal about it is that Mark's journey through Brooklyn was actually charted out based on when I had my first bipolar break when I was 19. So I had been like doing drugs and had a break from reality, and basically took this weird, crazy walk through Brooklyn. And so that whole scene, and it was spurred on by this really weird, dark interaction I had with a friend who, like, I later, who was like, I feel like there are several people in my life who I can kind of qualify as Ernsts. People who basically, hurt me really badly. So like something like that happened to me. And then I broke. I started walking through Brooklyn and had this really like crazy sort of experience that a lot of people describe or have had on psychedelic drugs. But it was actually just like, it was a lot of it was body chemistry and the bipolar thing, because that's what I'm like manic. But Mark isn't bipolar in the sense that I am. I think he skews towards that in his in his like physiology, because, a lot of the times those things can be like comorbid with like people who experience like splitting and things like that. Like, I think underlying the way I read him as a person is he has like depressive issues. And that can easily translate into having some kind of like break with reality, especially because Ernst had pumped him up with mind altering drugs. It was basically his, and in a way I felt like he was also kind of taking in the fact that I was writing it. Sometimes I see fictional worlds as real or a parallel dimension. I feel like, obviously I was reaching out to touch the Marvel universe. Like if I was contributing to it, that meant that it was coming from me. So I wanted to get as in touch with it as I could with what was like going on with me. And it's not something I would choose to do on every superhero book, obviously, but I felt like Moon Knight, it was apt. I felt like
I think it's one of the, it's another of those things where the period that you're writing in now is affecting the books as well, because like, you know, so much more is understood about mental health now than it was in probably any other run of Moon Knight.
Thank you, that's so true. Just starting with Jeff's run, you know,
and Jeff did it on a different, he kind of went at it from a different angle, because yours is much more, like you said, his was much more about very internal, and yours is having to marry it with the outside world. So it already has that little bit of a break, and then we already understand so much more about what we know Mark has from canon. Like you said, your own personal experience with, like, I mean, I don't know how it feels. My sisters both work in mental health, so like I have an appreciation of how these things have changed over the last even 5 years. And just because it's not just the medical community. It's like, say, I understand so much more about it now. So when I go see a friend who's bipolar, I understand what I'm seeing. Like, I understand when I knock on their door, if they say, I don't want to see you today. There's no okay, it's just fine. All right, I'll see you whenever. Just and
how it relates to him.
Because
DID, you know what I mean? It can be it's more trauma related. That's like a personality thing. But again, like, I feel like something in, you know, I kind of hinted maybe there was trauma is also genetic, and there like even bipolar can be kind of genetic. So like his dad, and the fact that he comes from the Holocaust, that means there's like trauma inherent in him, and the propensity to like to be
like, I went to school with a girl whose dad had survived Auschwitz.
Yes, my grandparents.
And this is like, that's the age thing. Like, you know, like, because it still freaks me out that I'm not that old, but a friend of mine's dad, and he was a very old. He was like a 40-year-old when he had.
It was.
And it's like, you know, I went to my best friend's dad died recently. He was 94, and like they're talking about him surviving Kristallnacht. And I'm just like, that's crazy. Like, this guy that I grew up with as a second father actually escaped the Nazis. You know, and like,
and that people were doing.
And my
people were actually doing.
Right. And my first boyfriend would be like, oh yeah, my grandma was in a room with Goering, and you're like, this is just nuts. So she bribed their way out of Germany. So like, but there's so many, and this is part of like my feelings about 194, I guess, is like it did tap into that absolute horror of it. And it's just a very visceral horror of, like, you know, I went to a Jewish school, so like obviously we studied it all and blah blah blah.
It's awesome.
We're immersed in it. We had like every film about the Holocaust, and but there is something about, like, and which means I've kind of avoided it since, on the basis of, you know, I've seen everything I need to see, and then coming to like 194 and going like, I know I'm reacting to this differently than other people, because like, I read it and I just go, like, this is just so revolting. But
so
it
Max,
works.
Max, I want to press that a little bit if I can, because you know, I grew up Catholic. I'm Christian. I had a little bit of a crisis of faith I went to a Catholic high school. I had a crisis of faith in my high school years. I started researching Judaism. Now, as an English educator, I am a Holocaust educator, in the sense that I make it a plan to teach some seminal texts to my students, but so that the culture of the Jewish tradition is very important to me. But I wondered too, to Rebecca's point, this idea that she's mentioning, that her reaction to 194 may be quite different than the average bear, you know, because of her heritage, because of her ancestry. I do question. You have mentioned several times this idea that you identify with Mark, you know, in multiple ways. One of those being the Jewish heritage.
Of course.
and among many others. But I do wonder that you took on this series. Did you feel, I guess, first, a responsibility, and second, I guess, feel a need to honor your ancestry, especially as you mentioned your grandparents who were true survivors of the Holocaust? Did you feel that coming into a project like Moon Knight, which just brings together so many of these different segmented parts of your being, did you feel that I have to do this the right way? I am pressured. I have to do certain things to honor them as opposed to me.
Yes, and actually, that was a big point of contention during my breakdown, was that a lot of the stuff in 199 and 200 is pretty... if it wasn't a Jewish writer writing it, it would almost be like controversial to put in a comic. So there were some things I had to fight for, like the idea of the creating self-loathing in Jews based on like using an alien device, or an alien sort of like
that's scepter,
and things like that. And it's like an unidentified thing, and like that was like a big thing. That was sort of like where I had to draw my lines, and I do see it as like a complete responsibility and a complete if you're going to take it seriously, you know what I mean? I think we took it pretty seriously throughout the run by even doing 194 at all, by addressing Mark's religion, by addressing his mental health instead of making it like, you can write Moon Knight comics that aren't focused on his mental health or his where he comes from. It's just like
Mark Spector, Moon Knight.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
If you do. Yeah,
well, you can't. No, I was gonna say you can't write that many that are focused on those, because that's what makes those ones stand out.
Yes.
Because people still. I mean, he's still in the Marvel universe. He still has to go kill bad guys. But I remember, like, with 194, the first thing Connor asked me about it was like, do you really tell those jokes? And I was like, we absolutely do. I have like hundreds of them that I would never tell to anyone non-Jewish, because they'd be like, no. Yeah. But it's a thing.
Every culture does it, you know what I mean? And I feel like I basically, I had a sort of ownership. Like, I don't have an ownership over the continuity of the Marvel universe, but I do have ownership. It's sort of like they've done amazing things recently with, like, Black Panther, like having like actually having people having stake in the heritage, like writing about some of these characters. So I felt like we should take advantage of this. I mean, I can't say like I know that there hasn't been. I don't think there's been a Jewish writer Moon Knight, at least in a while. So I was like, okay, so if they've got me for this, there's actually not that many like blatantly. There's probably a good amount, but like less than you would think, Jewish characters in the universe. Like, and I happen to get one, who happens to be also crazy. So why not just like, I mean, if I'm going to do it, I don't want to do it for like someone else. It's just kind of like them into my sick will of like being some slightly like me, you know what I mean? Like, I wanted it to be somebody. Oh wow, weird. Like, this weird. This is,
Yeah, no, for sure. Sorry, Tommy. Was it just looking? You mentioning anything more? I wanted to jump. Anything more with 194, Tommy?
Not necessarily. Most of my questions are just about the entire 12-issue arc. So okay. Please go ahead, Ray.
Oh no, I was just gonna. Sorry, Connor.
No, I just wanted to jump back a bit before when we were talking about 199 and 200 about the stuff you were going through, Bemis. I think you asked, you answered one of my questions about why Moon Knight was almost the right book for this and why it came to be like this. You spoke about this, but I don't know. I think I want to say almost thanks for those issues too, because I'm someone who really I don't have obviously not the same connections to you in a lot of ways with Moon Knight, but as someone who suffers from really bad depressive episodes that just crushed me and dealing with my life, something about the way it was represented in 199 was so,
Oh, thank you. I'm really glad you got it.
Yeah, it was so intentionally messy with the way you saw Mark deal with it and the way the world worked around him. And the episode we recorded was great with Ray and Chad, but I'm almost unlistenable because I can't put it into words. But I loved how it presented so much. It's so nice to have 200 almost be a direct answer and to have such a nice conclusion. And the way we see
thank you.
Change.
That's what it was like. It was like that in real life, and I really appreciate that because I basically had a happy ending. I'm still, as we speak, reeling from the trauma of what I went through. And I'm not, by the way, I know I'm sort of pigeonholed as the mentally ill writer guy, but I haven't been through anything like this since I was 20. It's weird. I have this sort of reputation for having an unstable quality, but in reality, I've been married with kids, and, pretty good for a long time. It just so happened that this really fucked me up. Yeah, and I'm still dealing with it. But between 199 and 200 in real life, my life turned around, and I basically, by leaving my band, it was weird, becoming a comic writer in my own mind, and things that I felt were befitting of a comic writer, one of which was fighting for certain things in the comic against editorial, which I'd never done. I'd always felt pretty meek and sort of scared because it's Marvel.
Yeah, exactly.
They're amazing, and it's it's a big opportunity. You don't want to screw yourself.
Yeah.
Or,
and it's a wider fan base as well, Max. So there are a lot of opinions.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah, a lot of opinions out there as well. And I just wanted to say as well, for 199 and 200, you hit it on the head. And thanks for explaining it about this period that you're going through for 199, 200, but also how, more importantly, you said Mark imprinted himself on you and not the other way around.
Yes.
And I think because there have been a lot of discussions on 199 and 200 from the Looney fans, and it's just really enlightening to get a greater understanding of where it comes from. And I'd have to just say you cannot be faulted for you sticking to your guns and sticking to your beliefs.
Thank you.
And although
we knew it would be we knew it would provoke, or at least I knew it would provoke people in the way it actually, I think, did.
Mm-hmm.
I tend not to, I assume it provoked people in the way that I wanted it to, in a way.
Yeah.
Which was to slightly confuse and make people feel slightly uncomfortable, and to bring up some of those issues of, I wanted people to say, "Oh, he's putting too much of himself into the comic." In a way, I wanted people to have that visceral reaction. Holy shit! This is like reading this guy's diary.
Yeah.
Is this appropriate? We're trying to read a superhero comic, because part of my journey on Moon Knight had been receiving some criticism, even from the onset of the book, of just and actually a lot of creators at Marvel were for being with Comicsgate and stuff like that. I was on that list of creators trying being accused of inserting their sort of social justice warrior politics, which I fine, maybe I did.
Good for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What do you think the superhero's doing? But hey,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I basically wanted to say to those people, kind of yeah, I am. But there's nothing wrong with that, because I am a writer. It's my responsibility. And as a superhero reader and writer, I really do take the character's history and the integrity of the Marvel universe seriously, and would never introduce an idea or evolve the whole world. Every Marvel comic is an evolution of the entire
absolutely,
this idea that has been created by that of creators, or God knows how many. So I would never introduce a sort of, it is that thing that we examine in the book where it's a mind, you seed it an idea into the world, and it actually is like this. It could be an antibody or a virus. So the thing I was trying to kind of seed into the comic in an abstract way were they were all positive things and things that I felt people could latch onto in an abstract way.
Yes.
Even if it was something from my life, that you would only know if you were me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like if it spoke to someone like in some weird way, then it was doing its job.
Oh, absolutely. And by having that abstract notion to it, I kind of liken it to, like music and with an album, say. Like you have albums which are throwaway, which are really good, like you listen to over and over and over again because immediately there's something that just you love. But there are other albums as well that, kind of tease out everything, something every so often. And so you return to it because you're going to get a different experience each time. And, I can only personally say as well, for myself, yes, issues like 199 and 200, for me, there's a gratification there because, a lot of it probably goes over my head for the first, the first reading, but upon a lot of rereads...
It doesn't. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Because how I was talking about the Invincibles being my favorite comic. When I first read, I was like, okay, this is over my head. Like, I don't know what the fuck is going on. And it's pissing me off. It actually annoyed me. And then I finished it. And then, I became obsessed with Grant Morrison, and so I went back and reread it.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait a second, it is like poetry. It's if I just open my mind and go into this sort of flow state with the book, and if I'm on the same sort of if I'm in the right zone, it'll just hit home lyrically. And so that's cool that you saw that.
That's exactly the experience. Yeah, it's not knowing first, but going back at it, rereading it. Just opening your mind, being receptive to all the ideas. It actually makes it a lot more satisfying a read.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I also think if you go into it reading it as just something to read and not trying to make sense of things, you sometimes come up with a better experience, and then you go back and do those.
Totally.
I guess to those of us who reread things a lot, that's kind of natural. I just kind of read things and don't think about it, and then I go back and go well, if I've got to talk about it, maybe I should pay a bit more, but generally you don't go into a comic and think panel by panel.
I wanted that's true, and I wanted it to kind of wash over people as they read it, in that way. I wanted someone who knew nothing about it to be able to pick it up and have the imagery just basically affect them viscerally. And then if like you guys are saying, if you want to go back and dissect it, and there's definitely explanations for pretty much everything that you see in every sentence and everything. But even came out of me because I write in an improvisational way. A lot of those things are the language and stuff is super the immediate and just are not poetic in it's good way, in a poetic and it's just wanky way. That's sort of what I do, but
that's great. Again, we're just bouncing around, more like a retrospective. And Rebecca, you've got a note here for 188. I just wanted to talk about, and Tommy, you've got something here as well on 188. I wanted to touch upon. So when it all kicked off, and once Legacy was announced, Max Bemis was announced, and Jacen Burrows as the writers and artists for the series, 188 came out of the blocks, and it had a huge impact in a very different way to 199 and 200. Rebecca, you've got a note here as well. We mentioned 188 was widely regarded as one of the best first issues, a fresh start.
Or whatever the initiative was at the time, whether it was Legacy, Fresh Start, whichever one it was, when they did the renumbering.
Yes,
but it really was. I mean, it was kind of incredible, because I just didn't want us to forget that when we start talking about the whole body of work, is when that first issue came out. It wasn't just people like us who are going to read Moon Knight, probably regardless, but who came out and said it's a great first issue. But people who were just picking it up because they're picking up all the new first issues were like, this was the best.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Wow.
Yeah. It was very bold as well, and we made note of it as well. that Tommy, you mentioned as well in your notes about Moon Knight not appearing in the first issue, but in no way I thought did that detract from it, because we got a real good insight into Patient 86, as he was known back then. And it was a great way to actually start a series. I thought it set it up beautifully. And Tommy, you mentioned more. You had something to speak of with Dr. Emmett.
Yeah, Max. So I just wanted to poke you a little bit on this, but
Sure.
I really enjoyed that first issue, and you pop onto Reddit, and even there was a little bit of dissentiment on the ITK community of like, where's Moon Knight? Why?
Yeah.
How can you call this a Moon Knight issue if Moon Knight's not in there? But I really enjoyed that issue because it was starting to really dig into the possibilities of the connections that Moon Knight has to the Egyptian mythos.
Yes.
But also, it really started to explore Dr. Emmett in a way that we hadn't seen in 2 or 3 years, because Dr. Emmett in your predecessor's run was really the antagonist. It was the controlling force that was medicating Mark and preventing him from becoming his best self, or maybe actually helping him. There's interpretation.
Exactly. Yeah.
But by the end of that issue, we see Emmett completely destroyed, and then we see her perhaps again in the back of the warehouse with Bushman when he makes his first appearance. And then we see her again in issue 200 as part of the Moon Knights, whatever we might call them. And I will admit I was a little bummed that we didn't get to explore her character, but I do want to question just, did you do that to Dr. Emmett? Did you create this new version of Dr. Emmett with the intention that maybe we can explore this one day? I know that you mentioned that you have an improvisational style of writing.
Yeah.
Did you intend Dr. Emmett to be a villain, a hero, a supporting character?
There was some discussion of her becoming more of a recurring character, but I think we turned away from it somewhere in the conversation. I think she had already served that role, and I kind of wanted her to bridge the gap. And I also wanted to explore her as a person, as just kind of a woman, as a person, a doctor, a normal person who is affected by Mark, and how the people around Mark are affected by Mark, or affected by people by superheroes, affected by people with a mental illness, and what it provokes amongst other people. So I felt like I kind of wanted to keep it, I wanted that issue to be her story, and I did bring her back so that there was a thread linking the whole thing. And I think really important figure in Sun King's history now, because essentially he totally screwed her over. And really harmed her and hurt her. And so no matter how redeemed he gets, he still completely, destroyed that woman's life. So I wanted her to be around as a reminder of it. She wasn't just this peripheral character who, she actually really matters to the history of Sun King. And, she will always probably, I hope that if they keep him around, that forget that he completely burned, he destroyed her. So it's but no, I wanted it to be I think the goal was to create a self-contained story, and had we kept her around, it would have felt more like something. I wanted that first issue to be you could just read it,
Yeah, well, one of the most shocking things was the ending. That when she does get, and beautiful artwork by Jacen Burrows. He just turns beautiful depiction, but then you get this horror element when Sun King just kind of turns crazy, and towards the end, and when Emmett kind of meets her, demise. That was really quite a shocking ending, and I can see now, as you say, it's a nice little one shot, a capped off story for that.
Yes.
But yeah, she's a very interesting character. I would definitely like to see her kind of explored a bit more.
Of course. She should always, they can always return to her. I mean, she's definitely affected. I see her as, to some degree, she's brought, it's her responsibility as a doctor to take care of her patients. So it's like she put herself in harm's way, but more than anything, she's a victim.
Yes.
Because she was just trying to help both of the Mark, and she was just trying to help, Sun King. So I think,
Yeah, no worries. Look, I'm a bit just mindful for time, Rebecca-wise. I mean, I know that
I have to go.
Yeah, is it...
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, work, unfortunately.
Man.
I have a nightmare job, and someone couldn't make it today, so I'm doing an extra shift. Hooray! Writing about all the terrible things in the world.
Yeah.
It's been an honor. I'm a big fan of all this stuff.
Obviously, it's been an honor. Your stuff's great. I've loved all of it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Centipede as well, which I forgot to mention. Great stuff.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Going back to my youth. I will listen to the rest of the podcast when it's out. And thank you very much for coming on. And thank you very much for the cameo.
Of course.
Oh, yes.
Of course.
Totally
Super jealous, man. Super jealous.
Yeah.
Haven't got over it yet. But thank you very much. And we'll keep reading whatever you put out.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Cool.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye, everyone.
See you, Rebecca.
Good night, Rebecca.
See ya. Bye.
Cool. All right, so yeah, let's get on to some fan mail here. We've got a couple of questions here, Max, from some people that have written in. I'll read the first one. This one's from Jamie McLaren from Bedford in the UK, and he says, over the years, Moon Knight writers, as well as writers of Legion and other long-running characters, have wrestled with the changing way that various disorders have been described and diagnosed by the medical and psychiatric professions, sometimes expressed in new and contradictory diagnoses in the comics themselves, other times by editorial decisions to downplay certain aspects of the characters. Did any of these shifts in portrayal or medical context affect your approach to writing Moon Knight, and if so, how?
Yeah, I think just the examination of, like, in the previous run that perhaps that everything had maybe been an illusion. I mean, I think there were times where people played. There were times where people played with the idea like a little fast and loose, and then I think it needed to be stated exactly what it was, and therefore, like, especially for people who suffer from it, to or any other trauma-based personality, in order to feel like they're being honored. But I kind of felt like the evolution over time of how people see these disorders, how people see any sort of personality thing coming, it possibly linked to something that might be chemical, is kind of a recent, people are becoming a lot more linked to those things medically. Or medically, and then also in pop culture. I mean, so the knowledge of what the bipolar spectrum is, or the depressive spectrum, it's no longer just this word manic depressive, where it's suddenly you throw in everyone who can get depressed. It's there's all different levels of it.
Yeah.
So I think Marvel was really cool to let me explore the idea that yes, he has what people used to call multiple personality disorder, but where does it come from? So I think we wouldn't have done 194 without that, and we wouldn't have done. We wouldn't have been able to sort of play with it in a sort of. I mean, we did play with it. We did play a little loose with it, I think, but I think it was all under the guise of, under the sort of understanding of of compassion for it, and that there is there's complete knowledge of what it is and exactly how it works. And then we were like, okay, so now how can we both explore it and make it a fun comic to read? Because it is a really like intense condition to have.
Yeah.
You know, and we ended like the last run was pretty serious, and I wanted to basically say, oh, okay, like how can we write an adventure comic while still acknowledging that this is like a very real condition that the character has. Yeah.
No, it's quite in depth, isn't it? Like, and yeah, like we've mentioned before as well, there is an imprint of Mark and onto you as well.
Yes,
which has, I guess, for better or worse, has been fortuitous to the writing.
Oh, completely. I mean, he's saved my life. You know, like writing this comic was what got me out of. It made me realize that there are heroic, or reminded me that there are heroic qualities to myself, even as someone who suffers from deficiency.
Yeah. Oh no.
Or if you deem that, you don't have to even deem them that, because I mean, them, So in seeing that Mark could do things, I was like, I can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, that's very good. It's very encouraging.
You can buy the sand for the sandbox.
Yeah, that's it.
Yes, I could.
That's it.
Potentially, yeah.
We have another email question. I think we've probably covered it, but anyway, I'd like to read out anyway. It's from one of our favourite Loonies as well, Dustin Cold Case Kurtz, who's been on the show. He says, hello, Max. Let me first say I've loved your take on our boy Mooney. It seems that you related pretty strongly to Mark Spector, and I think it's most evident in 194. My question is, how much of your own personal life was inspired from the story in 194, specifically with your family's relationships to the horrors of World War II and the Holocaust? Thank you in advance, and I look forward to hearing your response. So, yeah, we did touch upon that. A lot of some relatives, similar to Rebecca's relatives.
Yeah. My grandmother's whole family died in the Holocaust. She was like one of the few survivors. And then, my grandma in the Israeli army, like at the time. So, they're deeply rooted in that. And I also, I had some weird experiences with rabbis at a young age. Like there was like a kind of a weird thing went down with like the local rabbi when I was, I don't want to like get too into it because he's an actual guy.
Yep.
And that kind of inspired me to think about rabbis because priests have certainly gotten it, and there are certainly so many ridiculously terrible priests, but like this sort of creepy rabbi phenomenon hasn't really been explored as much. We need to get a creepy rabbi.
Can explore that.
But for me, like it was mainly the trauma that he experienced at such a young age, being something that I relate to because I just had some. A few creepy, dark things happened throughout my childhood, and then they're just like, basically, like, all the. It was really more of a metaphor for how the Holocaust kind of bit him in the ass as a person through his heritage.
Yeah,
it literally came back to haunt him. In Marx, it was an actual guy, but for me. Like just the trauma, my mom was affected by it, so it's affected me, and it affected my relationship with my grandparents. I'm also like half Jewish, so it was a big thing for me because, not half Jewish. I'm culturally Jewish because my mom is, but my dad was not born Jewish. Mm-hmm. So basically, like the Holocaust made my grandparents super, protective of Judaism. Yeah. So even though it seems like I'm like gung-ho about it, that they also kind of ostracized me and my family. Yeah. So a lot of like what I wrote about, even in 199 and 200 with the truth, and like his whole sort of condition or the potentially imaginary condition is because like I feel like there is an element of or just turning on each other that there is in the Jewish community because there has been so much anti-Semitism. So it's like there's a lot of like distrust even of like your neighbor or other people who are even Jewish, or other people who are related, or other people who are just nice people. So I felt like that was part of my metaphor, I guess you could say, in the truth's condition.
Cool.
And not to take away from the Jewish roots, or the roots of the trauma and the crises that have affected the Jewish community within the last several thousands of years, but recently the last 100 years. Max, I can say that issue with the truth came out at such, as you can tell, at such an important time in the United States. Because this idea of truth and this idea of spreading the truth and forcing people to believe this presumed truth without getting political is ever present, So it was a really, really interesting run. I think the entire 12 issues, and we're I think as a Looney community, we're quite thankful to have you here tonight. But I think that you were able to contribute to Moon Knight's story in that way.
Thank you.
So.
Absolutely. And Tommy, you have a couple of questions here from a special someone?
Yeah, so these are two questions that might be better suited to your artist counterparts, but perhaps you had a role in it. But Remy was really curious about these. So the first question goes...
Hi, Mr. Max. My name is Remy. Why is Moon Knight really white in this comic?
I think the answer is there's an actual answer, and it's that so the bad guys can see when to get them.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. He does want to strike fear into the hearts of the criminals.
Yeah, there you go. And then Remy's second question is...
Hi, Mr. Max. My name is Remy. Why does Moon Knight turn his belt into a sword?
Well...
Just referencing issue 194, I think.
Nice. Well, I think it's probably so he can carry it around. It's probably because if he's going to have a sword, he's going to have to grab it. So why not have a belt sword?
Exactly. Otherwise, it'll be like an umbrella, won't it? And it gets a bit cumbersome.
Yes.
Gets a bit,
it would
bit
be
annoying.
Yes. So just to make it easier.
Well, thank you, Remy. Thank you for those awesome questions. It's good to hear.
Thanks, Remy.
Look, guys, sorry, we're going to have to wrap up soon. First, obviously, Max, want to thank you so much for your time. You have been so generous. You have been so generous.
Problem.
Yeah, not only on the show now, but just with communicating, correspondence, online. Really, really appreciate it. And of
course,
we didn't get to mention it, but obviously the massive cameo that you gave us in the comic, it's just amazing. It was that Wednesday night.
Well,
it was a crazy night.
That's awesome. And I mean, I really it's really true that you guys played a part in healing me during this time, because I really do stay away from reviews, and it's generally a thing, and it took me a lot of sort of doing to make myself go, okay, I'm going to listen to this podcast. What if they hate it? I literally had no idea. And I listened to it during this time. It was the first time I heard someone analyze my writing to such an extent. If you think about it, except, I mean, in music, it happened all the time. Mm-hmm. But as a comic writer, it was the first time someone went panel by panel and discussed something I had done. So it was a huge turning point for me to be able to say, I can do this. There's people who I relate to who are intelligent, and awesome. So yeah, that's it's not just because you're awesome. It's just because you guys actually into the sort of narrative there at that point where people are kind of showing up to help Mark. Yeah.
Oh no! Thank you so much. And apart from the obvious thrill of seeing our names on there as well. It's just a fantastic nod to Loonies in general.
Yes.
Just a nod to all the fans, and it's just it was just brilliant, and it just lifted my heart.
That's who they are, that's who
Yeah.
those people were meant to be. We're just all the
Yeah.
people who support what is essentially like a weird niche, like comic, and
Yeah.
making it one of the cooler and
Yeah.
Marvel comics out there.
Oh, no, it's absolutely fantastic. So once again, a massive thank you for all your time. And,
Of course.
But before we go, we have a spectacle, which is basically a shout out. So I obviously want to ask about any of your upcoming projects, Max, which you can give a plug to.
Sure. Well, the only one I can really talk about right now is doing my first graphic novel, proper original graphic novel. And it's probably not going to come out for a little bit. I basically sort of gave myself a little break because, as you can tell, things got hairy for a little while. But I sort of dove into writing this graphic novel, and it's definitely like a mature reader's book. It's super intense, and it kind of explores issues about abuse, things like that. But it's also a really dark comedy. It's a summer camp horror book. But it's
nice.
Definitely, but it's a Jewish summer camp horror book. So
Wow.
there's a lot of
naturally.
of course. So there's themes that have up in Moon Knight, but they're, I think, explored in a little bit more of an adult way.
Yeah.
And obviously it's uncensored, and I get to kind of
Awesome.
let my demons out a little bit.
Awesome. Well, when is that?
More than I did on Moon Knight.
Yeah,
I would say it will probably come out in the next, 6 months.
Cool.
I know that's a big stretch, but we're doing it ourselves.
Yeah.
Me and this guy who's also named Max, who's a Russian. We are just doing it ourselves and doing it right now. It's being drawn, and I've never done a book outside of a publisher. So there may end up being one in the end, but we just wanted to have complete control from the beginning. And then I'm doing some other stuff with, publisher. That's all in its sort of primal stages, because I kind of, as I said in a few articles, I kind of am stepping away from Marvel for the time being.
Sure.
So it's kind of like starting all over with certain, to seek out a place where I can licensed or sort of superhero stuff. So we'll see. And as long as people just pay attention, I'm on Twitter, and
Max,
it's now what I do entirely. It's now my job. So
fantastic. Well, Max, you are forever a Moon Knight alumni now, so we'll be keeping we'll be keeping close tabs on all your projects, and we'll be shouting them out. I mean, obviously, if it's of the caliber of all your previously written stuff and your Moon Knight stuff, I'm sure all the Loonies and beyond will be really interested in what you have to say. So,
thank you.
No, sincerely, it's great. It's for sure.
You guys are the sweetest. Thank you so
much. Thank you, Tommy, as well, for coming onto the show. And thanks for
thank you, dude.
Remy, as well.
Yeah, hey Max, it was great to meet you, and thank you for playing such an important part in my high school life and college life, and
I know,
and kind of this capstone here. So
thank you. I'm glad we could have this conversation, man. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think we've
I
think we've lost Connor. So unfortunately, I can just hear
Connor.
He is. There he is. Are you there, Connor?
Floating in the periphery.
He's in the overvoid somewhere. I can just barely perceive him. We love you, Connor.
We love you.
Sorry.
My back.
A little bit. Anyhow, sorry, we have to wrap up here. Next episode, actually, Connor will be featuring with Dustin Cold Case Kurtz for the Isla Ra sessions. Dustin goes through his 4 books, so that will be good. And just keep an eye out. Loonies, the phases of the moon. We do go by the phases of the moon, so I think the next one, it's a bit weird, isn't it, Max? But
why
not? I think the next one would be, I can't remember the name of the phase, but it will be a classic run. So that will be I do believe, a waning crescent. So just look up into the night sky. Khonshu will reveal all. As usual, we are contactable on email, itkmoonnight@gmail.com. We're on Facebook, facebook.com. We've got a page here, /ITKMoonnight. Facebook group, facebook.com/groups, /ITKMoonnight. We have a Twitter handle @ITKMoonnight, as well as being on Instagram, Tumblr, YouTube. Just search for Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast. Finally, just another big shout out again to thank you so much, Delita and Noel, for the music of this show, and for Randolph Benoit for the graphics, and of course the Clerics of Ohm for their song on this episode. Awesome stuff. Well, once again, sorry, I did forget, Max, as well. A big thank you for your run on Moon Knight. I mean, specifically thank you so much for the 12 issues that you have given us and that you have given to Moon Knight's canon. It's fantastic. It's sad to see you go, but definitely looking forward to your upcoming projects.
Thank you, guys. I'm gonna run and go check on the children, and
Nice.
I will say hi to Lucy, who is diatrist.
Yeah, cool. Please do. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. We'll catch you back here next week or in a couple of days for the Isle of Ra. Catch you later.
Okay, bye, guys.
Khonshu, watch over the denizens of the night. Bye.
Moon Knight and affiliated characters, stories and events are properties of Marvel Characters Incorporated. Materials used and discussed within the podcast are intended for critique and review purposes only under the fair dealing concept of the current Copyright Act. The views, information, or opinions expressed during the podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the copyright owners.
Yes, we got that, Max. That's awesome.
I know, my sniffles. Oh,
That's
allergies.
The worst.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Immortalized.
Excellent. Yeah.
Immortalized.
In the 54th minute. That's fantastic. I'm gonna timestamp that. Max sneezes. Max blows his nose. Yeah.